Reconnect.
Are we on?
You're on.
Okay. Good morning, Facebook land. Good morning, all my beautiful peeps. In the Old Testament, it said that the witches peeped and muttered. So I don't know if we should call each other peeps or not. Yeah. This may seem like, man, we're just blowing through some stuff. We're going from chapter 34 to the end of Exodus, which is chapter 40. But obviously, I'm not going to go chapter by chapter by chapter. And here's why. Let me explain this to you. There's some things I pulled out of here that I think are very significant. At least they are to me, and I'm going to share the significance, my personal significance, with you. This is redundancy because it's going back through everything we've already talked about, and it's just giving detail. And so this is what I call academia, where you're going into the weeds trying, to find meaning behind every layer of all the pieces of the furniture. I'm not saying there's no value in that, but I'm telling you, if we tried to do that, if we did it, we could do it. We would be here for the rest of this year and into next year because it just takes a long time to go through all that. It does have relevance. It's all metaphorical because everything has a meaning. But in my estimation, all of this is pointing to the New Testament. It's all pointing to the message of Jesus. It's all pointing to the gospel. And these are layers. The reason why there are so many layers, and Facebook friends, we were talking about this in a free-for-all here before we got connected with you. It's because the human being loves complexity. The more complex a thing is, the more value people assign to it. What do they say? Knowledge is power. The more you know, the more powerful you are. But I'm going to tell you, you could be a genius, and you could stand in front of a semi, and the semi's taking you out. So knowledge is not necessarily power.
Right.
I think we understand what is intended by that, but we put a value on the more data that we can put into our brains, our consciousness. And I'm just going to tell you something. And if you've never heard this before, you probably are not going to believe what I'm about to say. If you have heard it before, you may be wondering about it. But some people will believe what I'm about to say. The true part of you knows everything. The true part of you. The Christ part of you knows everything. We do not send Christ to school. We send the human to school. And it's the human that gets educated. To what? To social mores, to consideration of other people, to mathematical things, to scientific findings, to geography, to historical. There are people who love history. My dad loved history. And, sit and talk to you for hours and hours about past wars, whether it was American history, Texas history, or world history. He loved it all, and he could talk to you about all that stuff. And my mind goes into, I don't care, And I don't mean that there's not things from those things that don't interest me. There's stories about all kinds of wars that happened, human stories, human interest stories that happened within certain parameters of wartime that I found very interesting. But the detail of war and all that stuff, I don't like war movies. It's like, really, I want to entertain myself with people running over each other with tanks and shooting each other and blowing. I'm not entertained by that. It's gross to me. But I'm going to stop right there. Complexity does not increase value. And I want to tell you something about you. Your value has already been established. You were created in the image of God. And all of those are words. But those words convey the idea that you are made in the image of what cannot be measured. So every time you measure yourself, and you measure yourself when you compare yourself to a situation, to another person, to somebody's idea of what your future is supposed to be, whenever you measure yourself by that, you're saying, that's the size I am, or that's the size I will be. And the truth is, what you really are cannot be measured. When we start in chapter 34 of Exodus, we're hearing some things we've already heard, but there's a little thing been introduced in chapter 34 at the end of the chapter. And let me just read it to you. It says, "And whenever the children of Israel saw the face of Moses, that the skin of Moses' face shone, then Moses would put the veil on his face. But when he would go in to speak with him, God, the veil would come off." Let's just talk about that a little bit. So what does that have to do with me? It has everything to do with you. It has everything to do with us. At various stages of people's spiritual journey, no matter what brand of religion you may have been in when you experienced God for the first time, where you were conscious of God, the brand has nothing to do with what happened in your spiritual exchange with the Father. So if you can just let all that go and let's just think about what has happened to me, what has happened with me. Whenever you had any kind of insight to God, if you're anything like me, it's so exciting that you want to go tell somebody. You want to share it. It's like good news. It's like, oh my God, this feels so good. If you've ever had a wonderful experience with God, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't, this is a foreign language to you. But if you've had an experience where you have felt the exhilaration of spiritual awareness, and you understood some things, immediately, as a human, we want to go and share that with other people, especially people we love. If you've ever done that, you've probably experienced something like this. As you're talking to the person across from you, they get a glazed look in their eye. You know. Now, not every time. Sometimes you're talking to somebody that's also on that wavelength and they're just hungry for it. And it's like, oh my God, that sounds so good. That's wonderful. I've shared things like what I'm sharing with you today with some people, and it's just ignited them. I have never thought, I never thought like that either. This is new for me. And it was exciting to them. There are other people that I could tell they couldn't get away from me fast enough. This is what this veil is about. When you come out of the presence of God, when you come out of an understanding and awareness of God, and you come into contact with other people, and you talk to them about it, and they're talk to the hand kind of thing, they're asking you, put a veil on it. Let me show you something. Go to 2 Corinthians chapter 3. I'm going to give you a chance to do that. 2 Corinthians chapter 3. Verse 13. Unlike Moses, who put a veil over his face, so that the children of Israel could not look steadily at the end of what was passing away. In other words, all this, every time you make contact with God, you're getting insight to what is coming, to what is happening now, to what we're moving toward. It's not about the past. But their minds were blinded, for until this day, Paul's saying this is still happening. The same veil remains unlifted in the reading of the Old Testament, because the veil is taken away in Christ. Now listen, he's talking about the higher part of us, Christ in you, the hope of glory. That part of you that is the God part of you. When you go there, the veil goes away. When you come out of there, the veil comes back. But even to this day, when Moses is read, a veil lies on their heart. On whose heart? The people who don't get it, don't see it, are not interested in it. Nevertheless, when one turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. I started with the veil because this veil that Moses was using was because here's what the people said, and if you've been doing your homework, you've read this. They said, look, we don't want to see it. You just go, let him tell you, and you come tell us, and we'll do whatever you said. Now, what does that sound like to you? Doesn't that sound like church? Doesn't that sound like religion? In other words, people want God in their life from a distance. They don't really want to get that close to God. It scares them. And so it's like, if you were raised Catholic, then your deal was, I'm going to do what I'm going to do. The priest is going to do what he does. I'll go to church. I'll listen to him. I'll go to Mass. I'll listen to him. When I sin, I'll go back to him, and he will absolve me. Look, you deal with God, and I'll deal with you. I'll go to church. I'll deal with you, and you deal with God. And listen, that's just one brand of religion. Pick your brand, and you have that same situation played over and over again. It's like we get real excited if there's a pastor that seems to really be in tune with God. We'll say, you need to go over there because he'll pray for you and you'll get healed. In other words, that human has a real contact with God, but he or she spent a lot of time getting that contact. I got things to do, so I'm just going to go get my fix on Sunday. So listen, I'm not shooting at anybody. I'm telling you, that's what this is about. It's about, I don't really want to get out of my humanness enough to get into God. So let's just put a veil on it. Now, when we go through these next several chapters, all we're talking about is how much detail there is in the furniture, in the attire of the priest. But there's an interesting name that you, if you read this, you came across. Bezalel. Bezalel. The accent is on the second syllable. Who is this guy? This is the guy that God said, I'm going to put my wisdom in this man. Now, the second thing I want to talk to you about is a cloud. Now, I find this interesting. I had already decided to talk about the veil, the cloud, the light, before I looked up this name to see what this name means. Here's what the name means. In the shadow, protection of God. That's what the name Bezalel means. In the shadow, under the cloud. Under the cloud of the Almighty. Anybody know Psalm 91? Psalm 91, one of the most famous psalms. He who dwells in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of his wings. Why the cloud? People say, the cloud descended in the daytime over the tabernacle, and it stayed. A cloud is, listen, if you've ever been working in Southwest Texas in summertime, and if a cloud comes and covers the sun, you love that cloud because it gives you a reprieve. It's protecting you from the intensity of the natural sun light that can just burn you up. I was watching some guys on a roof, on my roof actually, and it was hot, and they were completely covered up. I mean, their head was covered. They covered their face. They had long sleeves on. It's like, man, I want to get naked when it's hot, No. That you'll cook like that. So you clothe yourself to protect. In other words, give me the cloud. Let me tell you, this is just a continuation of what we're talking about with the veil. The cloud is that thing that says, I have a connection with God. That's why people go to church today. Because church has become their connection to God. There's a few people in church that really do seek God. But I'm saying numerically, unless something has changed since the last time I looked, most of the people are Sunday or weekend Christians pursuing. I don't mean that they don't live good during the week. I mean that their pursuit is primarily on the weekends. It's the few that really seek God on a daily basis. Seek God. You say, why do you use that term? Because that's one we understand. How do you seek what is everywhere? You know, it's a term that we use, but what we mean by that is how many of us really make it a point to be consciously aware of God Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Monday morning, and lunchtime Monday, and evening. You know, early will I seek Thee. 3 times in the day will I seek Thee, and at night before I go. In other words, your mind, and Thou will keep him in perfect peace whose mind is stayed or fixed on Thee, who has a God consciousness. We just like the cloud. You know, it's like the cloud is there. The church is there. I go to that church. That's my pastor. You know, do I need to say more? Does that connect with you? In other words, we have a cloudy relationship with God, but it feels good. It feels protective. But if that is what is enough to bring you contentment, then you're going to live a pretty sane kind of life all the time. I don't mean you won't have ups and downs, but I mean that when it comes to spiritual awareness, you want all human beings immediately work toward a comfort zone. Right. We're remodeling our house. It's uncomfortable. So you know what we're doing? We're working every day trying to get back to a comfortable place. But here's what happens with the cloud. The cloud came and stayed over the tabernacle, and then when it would lift, it would move, then they would move. So what happens is our cloud relationship with God is this thing that we'll stay as in a comfort zone as long as we can, but divine mind is constantly working to bring us to the next place. And so something uncomfortable happens. Invariably something uncomfortable happens. Something changes. The cloud moves. And then we move. Because we're trying to stay under the cloud. We want to stay under the protection. So when it moves, we move. And it moves in a variety of ways. You could probably tell me things I've never even thought of that's happened to you. And we'd say, yeah, that's the cloud. That's the cloud relationship. When Jesus came, He came to dispense with a cloud. And it's so ironic to me that here we are in 2017, and churches, in my view, mostly promote a cloud relationship with God. It has to do with, number one, it has to do with the level of understanding. Number two, it has to do with the need for economy. In other words, if I can convince you that you need me in your life, the chances are you'll give me some money to keep me in your life. I'm not being mean about that. I mean, just that. Isn't that how we do? Isn't that how we make exchanges? We make exchanges. Is the connection like that? I hope it's not like that. I hope that those of us that contribute to this do it because we believe in the idea. But it's not to finance somebody. It's not it's not for that. It's to keep a relationship in the right mode between me and the Father. And that's the purpose. And there was giving. Did you notice there was giving? There was so much giving in this deal that they told them to stop. Did you catch that when you read it? Said, we don't need any more. We got enough. Matter of fact, we got too much. We have a surplus here. I'm telling you, every church in town would jump up and down if they could say, we have a surplus. Because we gear ourselves in complexity. And listen, the church is trying to become all things to all people. I'm talking about the institutionalized church. It's like you go to church, you can get marital counseling, you can get therapy, you can go and do your workout.
Singles.
Yeah, so every kind of support group, it's all there. I'm not shooting at it. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just telling you that's what it is. But listen, the church business has gotten so big, it's complex. I'm talking about the IT department of churches are incredible. Now, if that's how you measure what your relationship is to God, you're living under a cloud. This is the veil relationship. This is the cloud relationship. Now, I didn't say that was good or bad. Okay? So don't get mad at me. I'm not shooting at you. I'm just making an observation. That's what this is talking about. That's what this is all about. We have said we are a New Testament church, but we have a tendency to live our lives in an Old Testament pattern. Because I'm telling you, Jesus came and wiped this stuff out. We have a veil, we have a cloud, but then there was something else that happened at night, and it was a fire. There was a light. Let me just talk to you just a moment about light. If, according to science, everything is energy, but if you reduce any manifest thing, whether it's a chair, carpet, a human body, down to its most primordial state, at its origin, it is light. Science says this is true. Check it for yourself. So that if God is light, and I believe God is, the scripture says God is the Father of light, that if everything is at its most primal state is light, then everything comes from light. Science proves that this is true. Sound comes from it. All the manifest things that are vibrating at the various frequencies are on the light spectrum, because everything is ultimately the light substance. Light. When Jesus came, before he said it of himself, he said it to the people he was talking to. He said in Matthew chapter 5, verse 14, "You are the light of the world." Now wait, let's just stop just for a moment. You are the light of the world. Now, what's he talking about? Because isn't the sun the light of the world? Isn't it? I mean, this earth is lit by the sun. And even Genesis tells us that it's the stronger light. It rules the day, and the lesser light, being the moon, rules the night. But the moon, we know scientifically, doesn't even have light. It reflects. It reflects sunlight. And so, we get, it's the lesser light. It's a reflection of the stronger light. But have you ever thought about this? Where does the sun get its light? You say, well, it's a ball of fire. And, and fire gives off light. Fire does give off light. No argument here. But what is behind that? And if you took that scientifically and reduced it to its most primal state, it's light. Everything is light. So when Jesus says, "You are the light of the world," listen, he's actually saying that your essence is the source that the sun derives its light from. Did you get that? The sun that's in the sky is a body. And that body that we call the sun derives its energy, thus its light, from the light. You're it. You are the light of the world. Now, later in John chapter 8, verse 12, Jesus said, "I am the light of the world." Okay, let's make these two statements. First, he said, "You are the light of the world." You got that? Mm-hmm. Then he said, "I am the light of the world." So if I ask the question, who is the light of the world, what's the answer?
I am.
No matter which one you're looking at. If I say, you are, and I say, who is, you would say, I am. But then if you go into John and say, I am the light of the world, and you say, who is the light of the world? The answer is still,
I am.
why is that significant? It's significant because everybody that lives on the other side of a veil or under a cloud, they have a veil relationship or a cloud relationship with God, is living short of the truth of their being, because you literally are the light. And God that we call Father is the Father of lights. You are created in the image of that. You are immeasurable. The Father of lights, in whom there is no variableness, no change, not even the shadow, not even a cloud, not even a veil of turning. So when Moses would come into the presence of God, it was so natural, because he was coming into his natural state, that he did not know his face was shining when he'd come to the people. But the people said, oh my God, you got to cover that up. That's too much God for me. And that's the reason why people couldn't come up the mountain, because in that mentality, that much light, there is an amount of light, there is an amount of life that will absolutely explode this vibration. It cannot tolerate it. When Jesus transfigured on Mount Transfiguration, and Moses and Elijah met with him, and Peter, James, and John were there, and it scared them to death, because his face shone, listen, above the noonday sun. It was brighter than the sun. Well, that's because it's the essence. It's where the sun derives its light. Are y'all getting this?
Mm-hmm.
That's you. This is about you. This is about what is available to you. Now, I can tell you that, and if you're enjoying your human existence, and if it's okay with you, this is just something we're just going to tuck away in our little data bank and say, hey, that's cool. I'm the light of the world. But if you ever get to a place where you need something more than your human can provide, then this is going to replay in you, and you're going to say, you know what? I literally am animated by the force of the universe itself. Every question has an answer in here. And this is why, unfortunately, religion and church practice is a travesty, in that it comes together to create an experience to get to God. When what is supposed to happen, we're supposed to, with all of thy getting, get wisdom. We're supposed to go inside and get in contact with God, and then, friend, you will have an experience. But when you try to start at the experience, you're working backwards. And I submit to you that for generations before Jesus and all the generations since Jesus, mostly people have been going at it backwards. And as beautiful as the Jesus message is, people are not satisfied with the simplicity of the Jesus message. They want to complicate it, because that seems like it's more valuable. It's kind of a shame. I didn't say that to make you feel bad. I say that to make you understand that everything you could ever desire is already inside you. You were born with it. You can live your whole life ignoring it. You can live your whole life ignorant of it. Or you can have a moment like today and say, you know what? That makes sense to something in me. And I will then just say to you, let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God thought, it's not robbery to be equal with God. I am the captain of my ship. I am the door into the holy place. I am the good shepherd that makes my human lie down in green pastures and makes my human restore its soul. I am that I am. This is good?
Amen.
Yes.
This is yours. I submit to you that these final chapters of Exodus, that's what it means to me. We got a veil, we got a cloud, we got light. Light is understanding. Let's let the light come on. Amen?
Amen.
Y'all gotta love me. Because if you don't, you have no light. God bless you. God keep you. Let his face smile on you. We'll find out what we can get out of Leviticus next.